So, we all have a story, and we are all unconsciously looking for that story. We're looking for what we want, what makes sense to us, where we're going, what has a reality in our life. And how are you going to know what is real for you? Or there's a world of fantastic knowledge around here, wonderful books, wonderful people, friends, adventures, lovers, but how do you know what is real for you? What is real for you is what you experience. You experience it, you feel it in your body. So my story is about my discovery of what my body, what everybody's body teaches me. What is the language of your body? And how do you talk to it? In the process of learning the language of your body and of learning how to talk to it, strangely enough, you get on the path of your story. Because your body may be just condensed matter. You know, if you've read enough esoteric books or know enough about quantum physics, you will say, oh, it's just energy. And in fact, of course, that's what healers believe, and I'm a healer, and that's what I work with. I work with energy. But the place that you have to start is with what you experience. And you have to always refer it back to your body, because if I walk into a chair and I bang my shins, I'm not going to say, oh, that's just condensed energy. So what? I'm going to say that hurt, and I felt it. That was my experience, and I'm not going to be walking into any more chairs again, no matter how much I know about quantum energy or dancing electrons. That chair hurt. So my experience is actually putting me along the path of my story. So what I'm really talking about now, and what I've been talking about in my book, was my story and how I learned to appreciate and listen to my body, and the powerful effects that that has. What happened to me was that I lived in a conventional Western world. I was a BBC producer. I made programs about society and all the things that were going right and all the things that were going wrong in the world. And meanwhile, I was kind of running along like, you know, the petals, the webbed feet of a swan under the water. And it wasn't really working for me, but I was keeping going. And I had various episodes of pain, which I ignored. And your body, in a funny sort of way, is teaching you a dual reality. Because on the one hand, there's that chair that hurts if you walk into it. And on the other hand, there's your mind that is creating castles in the air, adventures, possibilities, places to go, things you need to know, things you should have done, rules, all of those things. And your mind is not really interested in what your body copes with all the time. Your body knows how to go upstairs, it knows how to sit down, it knows how to recognize a chair in the way and to circumvent it. And your mind just leaves your body to get on with all those things. You learned them a long time ago, and your mind really isn't very interested. It's got better things to do. Until you hurt yourself. Until there's pain. When there's pain, or your body ceases to function in some way, you have to stop. And then what we tend to do is we tend to be very annoyed with our bodies. You know how to get out of bed. Why can't you do it? You know that I don't want another plate of pasta. Why do I have to eat it? You know all these things. You're just annoyed with your body, but you haven't been listening. So That's fine on one level, but then when it gets serious, again, your body might have a collapse. Your body might have, as it did in my case, a phenomenal headache where you end up in hospital for, I think it was 5 days the first time. But when you get better, you're not interested anymore. Body's functioning, fine, let's carry on with life as it was before. Well, your body will go on talking to you because that's what's happening. When there's pain or your body is ceasing to function, it is sending you a message. And it will go on sending you that message until you get it, until you stop to listen to it. So in my case, life was fairly difficult to keep up with, and it wasn't deeply satisfactory to me. That's the key thing. But I did it because I thought I couldn't see any other way of behaving. I thought I had to. And these painful headache episodes, as soon as they were finished, I got on with life as it was before and carried on with it. And then I maneuvered myself into a position where I could do what I really, really wanted to do, which was to write a book about an ancestor of mine who was a herbalist to Charles I. And I'd read his book that he published in the 17th century in 1629, and it was about plants and a real deep understanding of their medical properties and all the things that I never knew about plants. And I fell completely in love with it, and I couldn't rest until I'd found out his story and started to write this book. So I took leave from my job in the BBC and started to get my teeth into this book, and that was going great for about 2 weeks until I got a letter from the hospital asking me to go for an appointment. And I turned up and they said, you've got a brain tumour and it's going to have to come out. So I said, how? And they said, oh well, they can either cut your face open and go in beside the nose, and they can go in and they can get the tumour out that way, and then they sew it up, and after a while there isn't too much of a scar, or else they just take the top of the head off and then they lift the skull aside and then they lift out the brain, or they go in that way. So I was sitting in a chair pretty much like this one, and I just felt myself melt into this chair. And so this was like a big full stop, you know. There was no avoiding this particular circumstance. I did my best. I carried on working on my book during the day, and I just had terrible nightmares all night because I was still trying to ignore it. I was still trying to just get on with things. I was absolutely past mistress at not listening to my body. But the story was that I was extremely lucky. So let me just say that I was extremely lucky because it turned out that this tumour was inoperable. When I actually got to speak to the person who was supposed to do this thing, he said at first, oh yes, that'll be fine, I'll be able to do it. And I was thinking, okay, well, we'll just make an appointment, let's get it over with. But in fact, it turned out that it was much too deep. It was buried with one side of my carotid artery was kind of wrapped around it, and there were too many nerves and things that he just didn't want to go there. So I didn't have an operation, and the result was that we were waiting to see. I didn't really know what we were waiting to see. But, you know, clearly what this was for me was an opportunity to discover another reality, because I was remarkably stupid about it, but I eventually started to listen to myself. I started to listen to the emotions that were pouring out of me in my dreams, in what I was saying to myself as I was walking round and round the field. They were just pouring out, and they came out with words. They were talking to me. And one of the things they said was, "This is my head," as I was having imaginary arguments with consultants, and I've only got one of them. And eventually I started to listen. This is my head. I have to deal with this. This is my story. So what happened to me was that I had some healing. I knew nothing about healing. But I met a healer eventually who showed me, by reading my energy, that my body was telling my life story. And his name was Martin Brofman, and he had also healed himself from a tumour, and he developed a system called body mirror healing. And working as the mirror to my body, my energy, he was able to reflect back to me what my body was saying. And also, in the process, put in his energy to change and rebalance my energy to make it clear. So what really had an impact on me was his healing, but also what he said to my mind. The fact that he could reflect what had been going on in my body allowed my mind to compute that it must really be there, otherwise he wouldn't be able to see it. And for example, he said this tumour has to do with you not really doing what you want to do in your life, and to do with your relationship with your father. And I thought, well, this is all baby stuff. You know, it happened, I was 2, 3, you know, I've dealt with that, I've moved on, I'm a middle-aged woman, this isn't important. But if he can see it, it must be there. And the next day, as I was editing the draft of this book that I've been writing all through this process, I looked and I saw that the second line of this book was, "I never lived with my father." And that was important in the book because I wanted to explain that this wonderful 17th century manuscript that had inspired me so much wasn't really familiar to me until after my father died. And after my father died, I borrowed the book from my stepmother and I read it and I fell in love with it. But that was relevant for that book, Nature's Alchemist, which I wrote about his story. But I didn't realize that it was also my story. It had to do with my health, it had to do with the story of this tumour, and it had to do with what I was currently battling. That unconsciously I had been driving my story. I had been working on my story without knowing it. So I discovered another reality. I discovered a reality that my body knew about all the time. And I learned to read that reality in other people. I learned to become a healer because, and I work now either through the body, using Hawaiian massage, or through the consciousness, or through energy, because we are like a long rope. We are dense energy at one end in our bodies, and we are immaterial energy at the other end in our consciousness. Which is more important? Which is more important? It's a good question, because you can't live without your body, and you wouldn't want to. But on the other hand, your body can be affected, and is affected, by your consciousness. So it's like, which came first, chicken or egg? The fact that you're alive means that you're going to die. But what are you going to do with your life in the meanwhile? And that is the question that we all want to answer. That is unconsciously what we're here for and what we're driving to know. That is our story. So what is the language of your body? How does it speak? Well, it speaks in a pattern. And matter is patterned energy. It develops grooves. You know, so a chair is recognizable by everybody. We can all see that it's a chair. Even though if you were a quantum physicist, you'd say, you know, oh, its electrons are dancing around, but we all know it's a chair. A body is the same thing. We have our energy develops a groove which in its pure state is like the way light shines through a prism, or the way music or sound is broken into an octave. So at its densest level, it is the root chakra, it's the red colour. And things that are concerned with our feet, our skeleton, our basic fundamental structure are at the level of the root chakra. And they're to do with our security, our existence here, the first moment of our appearance in the world. We just needed to survive. Things that are to do with our nourishment are at the next level of our energy, which is around our reproductive area. It's to do with food and sex. And that is the area of our physical well-being. Once we're here, we then need to grow. And we need both food and sex to grow and propagate. So things that are to do with those aspects of our being are in that sacral chakra. Then there is the sense in which we are separate from other people. We are not our brothers, we are not our sisters. We have some separation. We can see that what we need is not the same necessarily as what they need. And in fact, we have a unique story, an individual story. So things that are to do with our sense of power and freedom, they are in our solar plexus chakra. And this, you could also say, could be like our ego, it's our sense of physical separateness. And all of those chakras are to do with our physical being in the world. And then there is the sense of connection that we all feel, that we feel as we come into the world. We're looking for love, we're looking for what it is that makes us flourish, and for human beings it's love, just like for a plant it's air or light. And that's in our heart, and that is the place of connection and understanding with other beings, with other things. And then there is the intelligence that is beyond our logic. And that comes from the air, that comes from our intuition, if you like. And again, it's something that we feel in our bodies, but we need to be sensitive to it. And that's at the level of the throat and the arms. And then there is that sense of mission, if you like, of our purpose here, that goes beyond the mundane effects, but into something that is what we're here for. And that is the brow chakra. That, you could say, is the spirit that's been here before, maybe, that knows more about us than we know. And then there is a sense of connection with the divine, something beyond us, something that perhaps we will never completely understand, but nevertheless feel that we are connected to. Without it, we couldn't have life. Without it, we would just be a physical body, but not necessarily a living one. And then that is the crown chakra. So that's how the language works in our body, and that's when we pay attention to it, is when it doesn't function, when we feel pain. That's when we need to listen. The story of your lives in your body. And when it doesn't work, that's when you need to know what's going on. Once you know, what happens? Once you know, you actually have the ability to release it. Once your body has told you its story, it doesn't need to keep pressing the point. You can let it go. Because you are in charge of your consciousness. You have free will. You're in charge. How?
How do you let it go?
It's very interesting that people ask how you let it go. The first thing is to know it, and the second thing is to intend to let it go. And the third thing is to trust your full intelligence, which means to trust your imagination. So your imagination is what takes you beyond matter. Logic is kind of part of it's a very important part of your intelligence, but it's pretty much concerned with, whether the chair's in your way. But that's not your full intelligence. Your full intelligence involves your ability to love and your intuition. And that is what really drives you. And your imagination encapsulates both of those things. So you engage your imagination. Now, there are lots and lots of different methods. In the back of my book, which, as I said, tells my story, because I want to explain in Change Your Mind, Heal Your Body, the process of healing. I'm a very practical person. And in the process of healing other people and working with other people, I could see that for some people the expectation was that healing was magic. And if it didn't happen instantly, it wasn't going to happen. And my experience is that that is not necessarily how it happens. Indeed, it can happen instantly, and it can be magic. But magic is the word we give to something that we don't understand. And in fact, it is possible to understand more than that. And for healing to happen, in my experience, it entailed persistence and discovery, and it entailed also experience. I needed to try things out and experience them in my body, and then I could say, oh, so that's reality. It's just different from the reality that I perceived before. So when you say, how do you let it go? As I say, I've put some exercises of 5 very important things that I did that I thought were really effective in healing my body, because I don't have a brain tumour anymore. What I would say is I would say basically we have the privilege of being able to give everything to the earth. Everything that we are comes from the earth. We're carbon. Everything that we eat comes from the earth. Everything that we build around us comes from the earth. And when we've finished with it, everything goes back to the earth. If we mess it up by not respecting the earth, and we do things that make it impossible for the earth to recycle, it's not the earth that suffers, it's us. We just make our environment intolerable to live in. But she is the great mother. You don't get here without coming through your mother. And spiritually, you can't be here without being a child of the earth. So you have something that you need to get rid of. You mentally, in a meditation, give it to the earth. And you allow the earth to take it and destroy it, as things that go into the core of the planet are destroyed. And then you take back the energy from the earth, which is your birthright anyway. Just by being a human being, you're entitled to have that energy from the earth. And you restore the place where you've taken the hurt from. And if you find that extremely difficult, if you find you're still connected with it, imagine an enormous pair of scissors and cut the cord, and you'll know straight away if you want to let go of this thing or not. The Hawaiians talk about aka, and aka are the invisible cords that connect us to everything. They connect us to the people we love, to the people we don't love, to our experience, to our environment, and to our past, and to our future. Sometimes we need to let go of those cords in order to be able to be free, to move on. A healer can cut them for you, but I believe that everything a healer can do, you can do for yourself. That's why I wrote the book. Yeah. A healer is really helpful because they are like a mirror. And they can be like, you know, if your car breaks down, you get somebody to come along and jump start the battery for you. And that's what a healer does. And then at the beginning, you might need a few jump starts until you get motoring by yourself. But you have that ability to motor. We all have that ability to motor. And that's the fantastic adventure of discovering our story. So if you have anything that you want to ask me about personally, then you can ask me, you know. If you want to ask me about symptoms, that's fine, go ahead. If you feel like you don't particularly want to share them, then, you know, we can talk about it. I'll be signing books and hanging around, so you can ask me then. So if you have any other questions, that was a very useful question, that one. It's amazing how many people don't know how to let go of something that they don't want anymore. Good question.
How would you, I suppose it's almost like the other side to the same question about like moving from like surrounding the illness or anything.
That's also a really, really good question. And it's such a powerful inhibitor of energy. Discovering your story is, so if you didn't hear, he said, how do you overcome fear? And there's I can answer that in 2 words, and they are face it. So there's a wonderful story about Chogyam Trungpa, who was a very clever tulku in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. But he was recognized as a reincarnation very young, and he went to the monastery age 3 or 4 to be eventually the leader of the monastery. But obviously he was a child, and he was looked after by older monks. And he was taught from a very young age that you must always face your fear. And so one day they went to an outlying Tibetan monastery, and they hadn't, the dogs hadn't been chained up. And Tibetan hunting dogs are big and very fierce. And so these monks and this little boy all turned up at the monastery, unexpected. The dogs charged at them, and all his accompanying monks fled, ran away. But he had been taught from such a young age that you must always face your fear. He ran towards the dogs. So what do you think the dogs did? They all stopped. I mean, you know, the dogs chase for something to run away. And so they stopped and went back to their kennels because there was somebody running towards them. So that stories are really, really powerful when it comes to what do I do with this? What you do is you sit down and you bring it on. You let yourself go into a calm and rooted place in your mind, and you imagine the situation that you are frightened of, and you bring that fear on, and you let it talk to you. And then you talk back. And then you know, it hasn't gone, bring it on, talk back. Eventually you get to the point where you just feel like you can walk through it. There is on my website, which is annaparkinson.com, there is a recorded meditation for facing fear. But you know, to be honest, you are always, these things are guides. You are always speaking to yourself in the language that you understand best. Your body is speaking to you in the language that you understand best. If your maternal language is Spanish, it's probably speaking to you in Spanish. You know, if your grandmother spoke a particular language, there's a good chance that your body's talking to you in that language. And so when you pray, when you meditate, when you deal with stuff, it's very good to go back to your words, your child words, because that's where you're really going to find that memory. The Hawaiians say that the sacral chakra, which holds the child, is the one with the memory. Remember anything. It's just full of plans and ideas. But the body is the one with the memory. And if you need to square it with your body in order to move things forwards. How many times have you made plans that you don't actually carry out? Why not? It's logic, it's perfect, it's what you want. Why can't you do it? Because you're not squaring it with your body. You're not talking to your body about what it doesn't want to happen, and why it doesn't want it to happen. So you need to persuade it differently, listen to its problems and persuade it differently. Oh. Noisy London, isn't it? So anybody else, any other things that spring to mind?
Just one thing actually as well. When you mentioned about the chakras, in your experience now, do you actually experience them viscerally? Like, can you feel where your chakras are and their presence and their...
Yes. But okay, so I started talking about this very strong physical reality and how you have to be conscious of reality. But of course, what I'm actually saying is that you know your story. When you go into your physical reality, that is what takes you beyond the physical reality. And when I'm working with healing, I see somebody's energy body within their body. I see their story visually. Also audibly, I hear the things that they are saying to themselves unconsciously, or that are coming into them at that unconscious level. And that place, what you are at your core, it has no geographical or physical limits. So, for example, when somebody who I don't know contacts me from Mumbai, I am able to do a healing with them, even though I don't know them and I don't know where their environment is. And I could say, okay, so I can do this healing, I can see what's going on in their physical body, and I can clear it. And I could say, well, that's just imagination. Except that when I talk to them about what I've seen in the physical body, it makes sense to them. It is their experience, it registers with them. And so then I say, fine, I have no idea how that happens, but it happens, and this is what was supposed to happen between us. At your core, at the level of your mind, which is in every cell of your body, you have no physical or geographical limits, which is as extraordinary as the fact that the chair is there, it hurts your shin, but it's all electrons dancing around. Thank you. Thank you for listening.